Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello there, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 216 of the new series of the Cognitive Podcast as we wind our way into yet another January, which I think we hit our first January in 2009. So we've been doing this a lot, haven't we? And we're all trying to get our way through the cold winter months. I send my love out to all my buddies who are in the middle of a terrible snowstorm in the Northeast and the Midwest. Here in Southern California, that's translated into wild wind storms. They're talking gusts up to 90 miles an hour. So it's going to be pretty rock and roll till we get to Thursday. So this should be pretty exciting, but it's pretty January, isn't it? I want to wish everybody a happy new year as I record this. It is January 5th, Sunday evening at 6:51 p.m. So I haven't talked to you since the new year. So here we are. Happy New Year. Glad to be here with you. I'm hoping I can bring a little warmth to your cold January. In the warm thanks department, I want to thank Jasmine Knitmore. Oh, I could thank Gigi and Jasmine all day long, frankly, for the contributions they've made over the years to this podcast. And I want to thank Jasmine because she gave us an update on Gigi, who's doing well. And I'll let you read their update to get that news. But that was much appreciated. But I also want to thank Jasmine from the bottom of my heart for some really good reality checking around trolls going after podcasters. Jasmine did it briefly and incisively. And I really appreciated it. You know, you need to hear it every now and then from a podcaster who, at this point, we started not that far apart. She started a few months before I did. But they've gone continuously since, I think, 2008. Whereas I had a bit of a break there when I had the job from Purgatory. So, you know, I consider the Knitmores to be more experienced at this game than I am. And it really always helps to have somebody who really does the job. I mean, advertising and really works it in a way I don't. It really means a lot that someone that experienced dropped in and said, yeah, trolls, you know. So thank you so much, Jasmine. I really, really appreciated it. What is on my hooks and needles? Well, first of all, the stash toss. Hope you're sitting down. 5 skeins in, 0 out. Why? I'll talk about that when I get down to Dizzy Blondes. But it's my own spinning. The 10 square bag. Sure, I said I was going to make that liner this weekend. Yeah, no, didn't. Haven't touched the Lakeside cardigan, which these are all such easy projects to finish. Vestuary, nope. Because I've been so sucked into the Romule sweater. This is the Sweetheart sweater. And I really, really am having fun with it. This is bottom up, so it's kind of scary. Now, there's no reason it should be. I'm perfectly capable of measuring myself and making that work. When you do the sleeves, there's a certain amount of trust that they're going to be wide enough for your flappy old lady flab arms. We shall see. So far, so good. But I have finished the central tube. They said go to 41 centimeters. I went to about 43, and I may yet add more to that. I want to see how much yarn I have before I do the big joining of the tube and the sleeves. And then I went on to sleeve number 1, and you can see a picture of sleeve number 1. It's cranking along. It's very easy and fun to do. I've been knitting this in bed. It's kind of replaced my sock knitting because it really is popcorn knitting. All you're doing is every 7th row for 77 rows. You're increasing 1 stitch right after the first stitch of the row and 1 stitch right before the last stitch of the row. And I'm doing that, make 1 right, then make 1 left. And before you do all that, you do obviously the ribbing for the sleeve. Then you do, in my size, 4 increased stitches, evenly spaced. Then you go into the 77 rows, and from there, you just go straight on till morning. So I've been enjoying that. You can also see a picture of most of the tube there in the show notes. First, there's a picture of my left arm wearing what sleeve I've got over my pajama top. And then you can see my tube of the body. That's almost completed in that picture. There's not much more. I mean, it looks the same. It's just longer now. And it's going very nicely. I am knitting every other row with the 2 skeins I have. So row 1, skein 1, row 2, skein 2, row 3, skein 1, row 4, skein 2. So all the even number rows are skein 1, all the odd numbers are skein 2. I'm alternating the 2 variations of this Malabrigo Rios Cereza. That's the colorway, cherries. Because there's a bright variation and a dark variation. Seems to be working, and again, my thanks to Quandom Quadrat for teaching me that trick. Hey Gemma, what about all those quilt squares? Well, I'm working on 11 of them. So far I've got 38 finished, and this set I am up to the last stripe, which I have already pinned on and will sew on tomorrow night. And that will, is that the last stripe? Sorry, that's the second to the last stripe. Tomorrow night I will be pinning on the last stripe, and Monday night I should be finishing that. That will, when I have those 11 done, that will bring us to 49 squares. Really, really enjoying this. Can't say enough good things about the basic log cabin. I have not experimented with the pattern that this is going to ultimately form, because you can turn log cabin squares to get all sorts of fancy fun. But it's going along just rippingly. So I haven't touched vestuary, which needs its armhole ribbings and possibly its neckline ripped out and redone. I want to see how the yarn's doing. But everything's bonking along really nicely. When I finish vestuary, that'll be 4 skeins out. When I finish this sweater, I think it's going to be more like about 9 skeins out. So hopefully that will go well. But Dizzy Blondes, this was the week of finishing yarns that I plied a few, and then I washed them, and then I thwacked them. I'm washing them in soak. You can wash them in Dawn dishwashing liquid. You can use Woolite, you can use soak. There's all sorts of really, really gentle cleaners. I finish mine by just simply skeining it up, tying the skein, and then laying it in cool water with soak already in it. And I splash around with my hands before I put the yarn in. We don't want to agitate the yarn. And then I just let it sit there for a few hours, and I gently squeeze it dry, and then I will wrap it in a towel and squeeze through the towel, because I'm trying not to felt anything, and I have good luck with that. So at this point, boy, I've done a lot. I've done, I think, 3 big skeins of the Morro Bay Fleece Works Merino, and I've done really about 200 something yards, about 201 yards of that beautiful Oink Pigments Cumulus, which is cashmere merino. It's a little fuzzier, and I'm enjoying it. And I just also finished what looks to me, it was a chain ply of a gradient, and I'm guessing the gradient is from Be Myself. So you won't be seeing much of that, because Be Myself doesn't dye anymore that I know of. But it was a beautiful gradient in sort of wine colors, from a very, very pale pink into a red that is almost black. Very, very handsome. And you can see a little bit of it peeping out in one of the pictures. It's the second to the last picture, where there's a pile of skeins, and it's to the right, peeping out a little bit. So this is very fun, and I'm still finishing these and entering them in my Ravelry stash. I haven't put the wine colors in, because I can't identify it, but I know it's got to be Myself, because that's the kind of dye job she did. You can really identify her style. So anyway, I was working on all of these on my Electric Eel Wheel 6.1 and on my Nano 1.1. I did the Cumulus on the Nano, and then everybody got plied on the 6.1. The 6.1 is having engine problems, which has been a consistent thing when I get the eel wheels, that their engines tend to stall. You have to really hit the sweet spot where you are spinning and drawing and allowing for uptake in a really good rhythm that doesn't strain the engine. Those are not strong engines. If you want something with a stronger engine, go get one of the wooden wheels, the Hansons, or I've got an Ashford, I believe, that I got from our own Lexicon. So it takes a little more fussiness to make the eel wheels do what you want, but I have to say you can't beat them for traveling. And that's a good thing because Maurice has just come out with a new version, a foldable. I forget what he's calling it. He's not calling it an eel wheel. And I just saw it on GoFundMe. And it looks good. And I think he was selling it there for $200. The eel wheels he's selling for $300 currently. I do believe I have a new eel wheel on its way to me, which I'm a little sorry about because he says the new wheel has a stronger engine, and I would have liked that. However, I have my trusty Ashford, which as soon as I get through this pile of stuff, I want to get back to the Ashford because it has some unfinished yarn on it that needs to be done, that needs washing because it's covered in dust. And I need to blow out the engine to just get some canned air and blow that out. But that's a great wheel and I'm looking forward to getting back to it. Meanwhile, I still have a fair amount of that wonderful Morro Bay fleece. And the interesting thing there is I have been spinning this now for a few years. I had so much of it. I don't know how many pounds it was, but I have to think it's like somewhere between 2 and 4 pounds of it. So I've been just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning it. And it's now in almost all of my Romuald sweaters. It's been that much of a presence. So this time I looked at the stuff I spun and plied this week and said, right there I've got a sweater. I've probably got just about 1,200 yards. But I did go back to spinning singles on the eel wheel from the Morro Bay. And one more skein of that. And I basically have a lovely white or cream sweater that's going to have a pretty yoke of some kind of variegated, the Cumulus, the Be Myself, or both in some combination. So it's been a lot of fun. I really needed to get back to spinning. I really needed to work through the spinning stash. I've got a lot of neutral stuff that I can spin that deserves to be worked with. And that brings me to a strategy. On one of my runs this week, I was thinking about the changes that I've had to make to run in the winter. And it matters because I get creaky in the winter. I get more joint swelling when the weather changes, when there's more humidity. It's interesting to age. And it's tough to be an aging runner because nobody ever talks about our situation. So there are now groups on Facebook, I'm happy to say, of people who are over 60. There's the Slow AF group, although some of those people are pretty fast compared to me. But there's women over 60 and there's just there's older women running, and then there's the over 60 group, male and female. And I'm really glad because you have to learn as you go. There isn't any model for this. This is kind of socially a new thing to have happening, old people being able to run. And it's so hit or miss. And that's the other thing you have to live with is, every now and then somebody gets on one of these groups and said, well, I just had my knee replaced and now I'm running again. And you think, when did that enter the running world that you can get a knee replacement and come back and run? I don't know is the answer, but I'm glad we can. Point of all this digression was I was running and I was thinking about how winter changes so much. And I mentioned this last episode, and I want to circle back and talk about that we probably need to talk about as a strategy, how do you go through the winter? And I would look at this as the category in dialectical behavioral therapy of emotional management strategies. That you have to manage your day-to-day life strategies to get through this time. And you may remember that involves eat, sleep, move, and focus. I don't think focus changes that much. I think if you meditate, you meditate. However, some other ways you work on focus are involved in the other skills. So I'm going to talk about those skills separately in terms of wintering. Since I always do it eat, sleep, move, focus, and I just talked about focus, I'm going to go to eat. Now I'm keto and I'm diabetic, so carbs are not my friends. But I don't have anything against carbs. That carbs are perfectly great if you're not diabetic. If you haven't broken your pancreas and your liver or whatever. And also cancer. There is a link between high sugar and cancer. So carbs have their place, and they're not evil, but you can't be eating them in unlimited amounts, and Americans tend to do that. So having said that, how do you eat carbs, and why do you eat carbs, and what do they do for you? Carbs are the first fuel you burn. We used to say they're the primary fuel, but that's not actually true. They are a primary fuel, but not the primary fuel. Because there are cultures, the Maasai in Africa, the Inuit, who are still living like their natural culture up in the Northlands, they don't eat carbs. They don't have them to eat. They're not interested in eating them in the case of the Maasai. So we don't have to eat carbs. Having said that, the other interesting thing is some of us do better on carbs than others. I am not a carb eater. When I was about 7 years old, I informed my mother that I was supposed to be a carnivore. She said, that's not possible. As it turns out, that might well be true of me. I've tried the carnivore diet. I'm not a big fan. You got to eat a lot of what in Britain we would have called the lights. You have to eat the organ meat. And Americans, we're not really trained to do that. We don't do it very well. And we don't have it very available. A lot of cultures do. So having said all that, if you want to be carnivore and that works for you, fine. But let's talk about the carbs. Because, look, if we did not have importation and sharing of food all over the planet, what would we be eating right now? Well, in Southern California, we'd be doing pretty well because we have temperate weather. And we're kind of living closer to where humans seem to have evolved in terms of environment. But where I grew up in Pennsylvania, in the winter, we had Brussels sprouts, we had root vegetables, and that was it. And every now and then we got lettuce if you grew it in a greenhouse. Okay, and when did you get carbs? Carbs would start growing in the early spring when the beans came up. And then you have a lot of carbs growing in the summer. And you use the carbs, you make things out of them, and you eat. So in the summer, you're chowing down on the carbs. And what's going to happen? Well, when I was a kid, every summer my mother would say we all grew an inch over the summer. Because it's fast growth, fast energy. And in the summer, everybody's moving around. You have more daylight, you're working, you're playing. So you need more of that quick energy. So carbs in the normal human diet seem to occur in the warm months for most of us. Now, as the winters come on, as the weather gets colder and the days get darker, the carbs are dying out. So by the time you hit the harvest, and you have the harvest festivals around Halloween or Thanksgiving, by the time you get there, you're eating up the last of the carbs because you don't want them to rot. You want to use them up. And you're also slaughtering your animals that you keep for meat, and you're eating that meat, and you're preserving the meat where you can. So as we go into the winter, you don't have carbs. You have foods that are more protein and fat-based. Okay, and so as we enter the winter now, we have carbs all over the place. And I think you might want to consider in your diet that your metabolism slows down at this time of year a little bit. So eating carbs now, you're just going to put on weight. Now, it used to be with humans, we lost weight in the winter because we didn't have as much of a food supply. We were short of food. We are not anymore. So your body isn't really great, I would argue, at processing this stuff in the winter. What that really means is lighten up. Just reduce the diet a little bit, especially I would say cut back on the carbs a little bit, because your body isn't going to be burning them as effectively. In the meantime, well, if you're a fat eater like I am, you're going to lose weight just in a lovely way at this time of year. I have to say, this is, every time I try to take off weight, this is when it works the best. Because my body is only too happy to turn to burning fat. So think about adjusting your diet. And, use your common sense. Like I said, you're not diabetic. You don't have to be keto. You don't have to feel broken. But, I just found out one friend said, well, I'm going to go cold turkey and go totally carnivore. And they are a heavy candy eater. So they not only eat carbs, they eat a lot of unhealthy carb. They eat a lot of white sugar, which is addictive, like meth is addictive. So they're going to go into withdrawal, okay? They're not going to be nice to live with. And they're not listening to this as far as I know, so we're good. Okay, so you want to think about when you're adjusting your food for the winter, try to adjust it thoughtfully. Now is a great time to give up the white sugar. Or my version of keto was no flour, sugar, rice, or potatoes. I did that for 3 weeks until I found out that real keto meant also no root vegetables or beans. And that works great for me. If that doesn't work for you, that's great. But this is a good time of year to help your mood by reducing the carb intake. And let me tell you, any time of year is a great time of year to stop eating the white sugar, because that just makes everything in your body, every single cell will inflame from white sugar. Having said that, because we're adjusting the food, what about it's eat and sleep and move and focus, okay? So I'm going to go to move next, because I do not run as much this time of year because the weather is working against me. And I said that living in the desert of Southern California. All you people up in the cold weather, heaven help you. So you have to adjust your movement. You're going to anyway. Even if you exercise in the gym, if the weather is bad, you're not going to be able to get to the gym. So your exercise is going to be cut back a little bit, unless you live in a place that is very, very temperate, down in the LA basin or the equatorial areas, if you're in Hawaii, something like that. Although when they get into monsoon season, that is no laughing matter in my experience. At any rate, so you're going to reduce the movement. You want to keep up a schedule that allows you to maintain at a slightly lower level, that allows for missed days. Now, I have it very nice because I've got a bike desk. So, I've been going back to biking on my bike desk. It is not as rigorous a thing as running is for me, but it gets the energy out. Because if you are exercising hard in the warm weather and you stop for the winter, your mood's going to get miserable. And I did. I got very depressed when I took 9 days off running. So you do have to find ways to compensate for your movement. And let's not forget, you can lift indoors. It's very inexpensive to get a set of weights that you can keep around the house, out of reach of the kids, please, because they can hurt themselves with them. And you can just lift a little bit every day. You can get a big rubber exercise ball for like $30 and use that to do some exercises and ab work. You can reduce your movement. You can vary your movement. You can change your movement at this time of year. Summer will come again and you can go back to your outdoor exercise schedule. But for now, you're going to adjust your movement. And of course, this means too, you don't need the amount of food if you're reducing your movement. And finally, there's sleep. And all I'm going to say is it's strange sleeping this time of year because we have so much darkness, even here in California. And you're going to get tired when the darkness comes down. Your circadian rhythms adapt. So you have a chance to sleep more at this time of year. Yeah, I'm not getting up at 5 in the morning so I can be out running at 5:30. I'm trying to run on my lunch hour, which automatically reduces how much I can run. I don't have the time. Or biking or whatever. So your sleep is going to adjust itself as you change your food, as you change your movement. The reward of balancing your food and your movement is your sleep will change in a good way, and that'll be okay. And you will be able to shift back when the weather warms up and the days get longer. So eat, sleep, move, focus. All of these things you want to think about adjusting for wintering over. And a lot of people need more sleep in the winter. They feel better if they get more sleep. Sure, you're cold all day, you get in a warm bed, cuddling up in the bed, or doing what the Scots call herkle-durkling, where you stay in bed more than you need to in the morning. Sure, this is the time of year for that. But all of this is going to affect your mood. So please seriously consider your plan for wintering over. And don't be surprised, the darkness means your mood might be a little tougher, might go a little more towards the depressed end of the mood spectrum. It's okay. This is why I want you to think about adjusting your food and your movement and your sleep and your focus. Meanwhile, this is a great time of year to work on those meditation skills because you're indoors more. So if you find yourself with nothing to do, set a timer outside yourself, sit down and just count your breaths for 10 minutes and give yourself a little break time to meditate. Meanwhile, I've put a very nice meme in the show notes about turning off your Google Maps location history. It takes you step by step through that process. You can find this in the show notes, which are at cognitive, don't forget the K, cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com, and also under our group in Ravelry. The reason I was thinking about this one this week, and I want to thank Feminist for this meme, it's a very good one. You know, I was talking before about turning off the location following you on your iPhone and by extension on your Android or Google phone. And I was talking about, well, you know, there are reasons to keep that on. If you're out in the wilderness, if you're out hiking, if you're just older and you're on a walk or you're by yourself at home, having that location on your phone turned on actually has its advantages. However, there isn't really a good reason to have it turned on in Google Maps, as far as I can tell. That your phone itself should track you if you feel like you need to be tracked. So I'm not sure why you want a location history in Google Maps or in Apple's Maps for that matter. So you can go in and turn that off because it's a little bit too invasive that your Google account can track you and can look at your whole history that way. So if you'd like to try that, I have put that in the show notes. The meme is there. Enlarge it and read it if you need to. Meanwhile, oh shoot, well, still working on the shoes. That's going pretty well, but I did a 3-mile run yesterday and came home and my right gluteus maximus, that's my butt cheek, for those of you who don't do Latin or anatomy, woke up with that sore today. And that's been the problem, is I'm having problems in my right knee and problems in my right hamstring and up the glute. So today we took the beloved son out and got him new running shoes, which was really nice. We had his feet assessed. The guy at the shoe store did a lovely job. This is Runner's Lane on Soledad Canyon in Santa Clarita. They did a nice job. They filmed him with an Apple phone from ground level and slowed it down, and you can see the way he twists. Oh, it's just hitting me what he meant. Because my son's overpronating. He doesn't swing out too much, but then he tends to go around the edge of his foot and swing in sharply, like particularly his left foot swings in sharply. So it was really nice to see that. So we got him a pair of shoes for pronation, and they're Hoka's. And I cannot remember the name of the model. It is not the models I have. I have the Bondi and the Stinson. He's got a different one. And I want to say something like Striga, but I don't know. That's too good to be true. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, went and had that done. If you're going to get running shoes, this is an excellent thing to do. You want to have them film you and assess as you run on a treadmill how your feet move while you're getting your shoes. If you are overweight, you are going to tend to pronate, which means you roll your feet first towards the outside as your heel strikes, and then as you move down your foot, you roll towards the outside, and then you move in as you get to the ball of your foot. You have an inward twist. People who are a lighter weight or more appropriate weight for easy running, they have lighter shoes because they don't do this. They need relatively little support. But if you pronate, you need pretty heavy padding on the base of your shoes. I don't know if you remember way back when, but there was a thing about barefoot running, and I did participate in that. They don't make those shoes anymore. I had Vibram shoes that had 5 toes, and they were great, and they actually fixed my feet. But it's kind of hard to run in the barefoot shoes because you do feel everything on the ground. So you have to be running on a pretty soft groomed trail to take that. But I'm into the get the heavy padding. So I, meanwhile, got myself a knee brace, and we're going to see how that works. Because I put it on after we bought it, and we were in another store, and the boys were horsing around. And I put on the knee brace. It feels a little tight. We'll see. But it immediately made my whole right leg feel better. So apparently I need some kind of better knee support than I'm getting. And this may take a little investment to get this right. The brace costs $30. And if it's too tight, I'll go to a larger size. Like I said, this may take investment. Sometimes when you're working on your running gear, you really do have to keep experimenting till you find the right formula. Meanwhile, my son has a friend, a female friend, and he and she raced this weekend. They raced with the LA Sheriff's Department. They have a thing called the Mug Run. And if you run enough of these, they actually give you a mug. But they were supposed to get a shirt, and for some reason they didn't. I didn't figure this one out. I did not participate because I don't feel like I can run a 5K really effectively right now. I could run and walk it and make it. I don't know, I did 3 miles yesterday. It might be possible, but we'll see how the knee brace works. But I am looking forward to the Cupid Dash on February 16th. My son is looking forward to a race at a local college campus on the January 18th, but I won't be doing that. And so you can see the races that I have upcoming. Meanwhile, in the fluffy books, at last I finished Death on the Tiber by Lindsay Davis. And one of my listeners, and I can't remember who you were, had said she thought this was the last in the series. I can see why she thought that. In the end, there is an escape, which to me suggests we're not done with this storyline, that Davis is leaving herself an out if she wants to continue this storyline. She has a tendency to tie everything up when she's done with a series. But Death on the Tiber, there is a new book out. It is not yet in print. I want to say it's due in July, but there is another Flavia Albia coming, which I'm happy to say. Georgette Heyer, I'm done Cotillion, and I'm done Arabella. I've got to update this. I have moved on to Pharaoh's Daughter, and I'm pretty close to finish that because I am knitting as I listen to these guys. And I'm talking slowly because I'm typing it in by hand in the show notes. Remember to add it. Okay, so I really liked Cotillion. It was funny and sweet. Arabella. I'm trying to remember Arabella because I've been reading these so fast. They're not heavy reads. Arabella is really interesting. The heroine gets herself into a fix, and it's kind of the enemies to friends done lightly. They're not really enemies. He alienates her early in the book by saying something snotty. She says something snotty but untrue back and gets herself into trouble because the rumor spreads and people believe what she said is true. As they always do in Georgette Heyer books, it works out fine. Arabella was nice. It was a little bit frothy, not as frothy as Cotillion. It was just a pleasant read. I really didn't register it hard. I think at this point I would have to say the books I have liked the best by Heyer have been Talisman Ring, Cotillion, and one I haven't really talked about, The Great Sophie. Pharaoh's Daughter is a little too far over the top into a kind of cruelty, and I did not enjoy it. It's very hard to believe. Historically, knowing what I know about that era, it could never have worked out the way that it's clearly going to work out if the formula holds up as I get to the finish line, and it's probably going to. I'm not a big fan of Pharaoh's Daughter. I don't see myself circling back, but it's okay. It was a pleasant experience. I'm glad I have worked my way through the canon of Heyer and read it. But I don't know where it is in terms of her timeline, but it feels like it's an earlier book. She doesn't feel as an author like she's as sure-handed with the plot. Something I really like. Well, there it is, my long-armed duster. My last long-armed duster, which is about 3 years old, went to the gods this week. It just snapped. I'm not really sure how I even managed to do that. I went back through my Amazon purchases, found it. It's $9. This is a great tool to have if you have ceiling fans, if you have high ceilings, if it's hard for you to reach those corners. And also, if you live in the desert and you have black widow spiders and lots of spider webs you don't want to put your hands in, this is a really nice thing. It just is a big fluffy feather duster. It bends to a 90-degree angle from its pole, or you can have it any angle between that and 0 with its pole. The pole extends to 100 inches. You just can run this on the top of your ceiling fans, run this in all the corners. I like to take mine and put it in a corner of the house, and every time I walk into that room, I will pick it up and do one wall and ceiling edge. So I might do all along the north wall in the edge to take out the spider webs. I may go down the corners of the walls down to the floor. I may just lean over and let it do the baseboards. But I will do things like on a Saturday, I'll put it in a corner. Every time I walk, I will take it down wherever I'm walking, doing that dusting on one side, Then I'll go into a room, do what I went to do in that room, turn around, come out, and walking back the other direction, pick it up and do the other side of the hallway or the room or whatever. It's just a great thing to have around. You just take it outside and shake it real hard. I would say if you're going to shake it outside to get the dust off it, you want to shorten the pole. Okay, do not extend the pole while you're shaking it because it will snap at the base of the duster where it connects to the rod. That is what eventually killed mine. But I really like my long-armed duster, and for, I'm looking at the price here, I think 8 something, for $10, this is a really great tool to have around the house. It's just a handy, handy thing. You can do the tops of picture frames. You can do the shelves real high. Now, if you're doing your fans, do things like put a sheet on the floor under the fan to catch the dust, because you may sweep a lot of dust off there. Okay, do think about the fact this thing can get a lot of dust. And so do be careful with it that you don't just pile the dust in a place that is even worse. Like we have one fan over our big master bed. I do not want to throw the dust onto the bed. I have terrific allergies. So you need to think a little bit when you use this. But this is a really nice tool around the house. And I give you the link to the one I got on Amazon this week. Put a lid on it. Even as we speak, I am doing my weekly tomato sauce. I am really enjoying this. I talked about this before. Lately, it's all the leftover meat. There's leftover turkey in it. There's leftover prime rib in it. And then I throw in any ground meat that's lying around. I'll just defrost a pound and put it in there too. And I put a lot of tomato sauce, pre-made, an organic brand that's a good rating on the Yuma app. And, I will just put that in there, and then I will add all the meat in. I put in a bunch of cheese. I'll put in a brick of cream cheese, 8 ounces. And I will put in about half a pound of shredded or grated Parmesan. I may put mozzarella in it, and you just put it on high. So that's been simmering in the background all day. Currently it's cooling, and it will go into the fridge either very late tonight or tomorrow morning. In the meantime, the tea tastings. I should tell you, I'm so behind on this. Tonight, as I speak to you, I am drinking day 16 because I've really gone slowly with this. But this has been a great calendar. I'm enjoying it immensely. Day 11 was another nice one. This was, can't read it well, the Ristretto Blend Herbal. I hope I'm saying that right. It's chicory, cacao nibs, red rooibos, cinnamon, dandelion root, safflower, blue Maldive flower, caramel essence. I am not a fan of caramel or nuts as flavors in my tea, but I actually enjoyed this a great deal. And I believe on this one they said that you should consider making this as a latte, and I think that would work very, very nicely. I, of course, would use cream. I keep failing in my mission to get a good frother. This was a nice tea. I had about 3 drops of stevia in it, and it was pleasant. It was kind of sweet. It wasn't a memorable flavor, but it was okay. It was a pleasant enough cup. Day 12 was Heart's Delight Herbal. On the other hand, I really like this one. This was green rooibos, ginger, cinnamon, peppermint, clove, orange peel, blue cornflower, lemon balm, peppermint essence. This comes across with a nice fruity peppermint kind of taste, and I just deeply enjoyed this. This is not as fruity as some of the other entries we've talked about, but this was just a really nice, light, pleasant cup of tea. Good scent to it. Nice, solid flavor. This is one of the ones I would consider buying again. I really enjoyed the Heart's Delight Herbal on day 12. Okay, so we're into the blather. Hooray, hooray, hooray. I seem to be going a little fast today, but I just recorded on Wednesday, and that probably explains it. First of all, as I've said, Happy New Year. There is a picture of one of my Wooble alter egos. That is Evening Gown Barbie, who I kind of made up myself from leftovers. She is standing next to the teapot my son gave me. It was Legos, well, a Legos knockoff, and I had to build it. I did learn something this week while talking to an adult patient who has ADHD, that when you have ADHD, or when you're me and you're just hyperactive, although it's easier for me because I don't have the impulsivity, I have the good focus. But if you need to work on your skills and you want to be less hyperactive or less impulsive, you need to work on learning to follow printed directions. That is a great exercise in focus. So one of the things I don't think I've ever said, and I want to point out here, Legos are extraordinarily good training for kids to learn to follow directions. Whether it's just pictures or whether there's actual words, Legos will teach you to work through a process by following instructions quite literally. If you don't get it right, you don't get the little yellow teapot that I've got here. The other great way to do this is the Woobles kits, that they will not put themselves together. They have easy, clear instructions. They have great videos as well. There's printed instructions. And if you can settle down with your kids and work your way through these, they will help you with your focus. They will help your kids learn to follow directions. Let me tell you, and I thank Sister Lucine, who was one of the sisters of St. Casimir who taught me in high school. She taught me my first lab-oriented course, Introductory Physical Sciences. And all that course was learning how to follow directions in a lab so you don't ignite yourself. And I'm deeply grateful to that woman because that is where I learned this skill. And this is a skill you have to learn. Another great place this skill used to be learned in my day was the girls who had to take home ec class or the boys who had to take shop. Where in that situation, again, on rather straightforward, simple projects, you learned to follow a process, to follow written instructions, and to look at images and to make your materials match what you could see. So I want to point out, there's Barbie and she's got her teapot. And those Woobles and those little Lego kits, these are really great for improving focus and for teaching the skill of following directions. Meanwhile, solar power is happening. We are still making up a list of questions, and we really just need to make the time to talk to the salespeople. But that's looking very promising. I will say, by the way, circling back to New Year's, we had a lovely prime rib dinner that night. My husband cooked it, and it was just a very peaceful, enjoyable evening together. I do want to make sure I point that out. And so Happy New Year to everybody. The Kindles, I was talking about these in the last episode. I am now the proud owner of 5 Kindles. Here's how that's working. The first one I bought easily about 14 years ago, and I filled it with my oldest books from Kindle and from Amazon. I am very deeply happy about that. It has an old-fashioned connector plug, so I'm just leaving it alone. I'm not messing with it. Also, it's one of the original type of Kindles. It was not meant to be a web browser. So it was very hard to connect and manage with the internet. Loading it was a really interesting experience. I don't even remember how you did it. All right, now the next thing I have 2 little Kindles. They are the least expensive Kindles, like that original one. So Kindles 2 and 3 are, I believe, 16 gig. I hope it's that much. Anyway, they are each loaded with books. Kindle number 2, I loaded up with books and with Audible books because I found out they will take Audible books. And then I went back and took the Audible books off there, and I'll get to why in a second, and just loaded it with regular EPUB format books, just readable books. And that worked so well, I am now on Kindle number 3 and loading it. And it's a long process, and I believe I will get through my entire collection between these 3 Kindles. With Kindle number 3, since I'm still finishing loading number 2, and I'm shocked at how many books it's taking, I am thinking of weeding out all the document files that are knitting or crochet projects and putting them all in one place on Kindle 3, which means I can add yet more books to Kindle 2. By the way, every time I buy a new book online, or a new Audible book, I am adding them to one of the Kindles now as I buy it to make sure that they are being uploaded and I don't have to keep going back and adjusting this. All right. Kindles 4 and 5 are both Paperwhites. They're both 32 gig. They're slightly taller. They're brighter. Very nice. And 4 and 5 right now are all audio books. I have not got my complete collection on them. There's going to be a Kindle 6. It's going to be a Paperwhite. And it's going to take the remaining audio books. So I want to be able to look at these and know by their size whether they have books or whether they have audiobooks. And by the way, when I finish loading one, I immediately put it in airplane mode, so now it's offline. So all my books are there. I can charge it up anytime I want. I can read them. The little Kindles, wow, they have well over 200 books, depending on the size of the books and such. Oh no, they may even have more than that. Actually, let me hold that thought. It's the Paperwhites with the Audible books. They have at least 200 each. One has slightly more because it has a lot of short bursts on yoga and exercises. You will be able to put somewhere between 200 and 250 Audible books onto the Paperwhite if you get the 32 gig. I am heading into extra innings here and I'm going to get myself another one. I am not hiding the fact I'm buying these now because I don't want to get them when the prices go up with the tariffs. Even when we hit the next Prime Day, I doubt the prices will come down this low again because of the tariffs. And if I'm wrong about all this, I'm really glad to be wrong, but I feel great. I'm looking at these 5 little tiny slim books on my desk and my whole library is there. I am so pleased. It does need organizing and I'm working on that a bit at a time. The Junk Fairy was supposed to come on the 10th. That looks like it may be canceled or may go to the 17th. I have to decide how our finances are going. I did not get to do my planned candle pour. This is okay. I still have a lot of candles from last year's pour. The only thing that makes it challenging is when I don't do the candle pour and when I'm burning candles I already have, of course that's more candle containers I'm going to clean out and add to this upcoming candle pour. Nonetheless, I am looking forward to it. It's going to be 10 pounds of soy wax in the pour. And so that will just be a sort of long afternoon. And in the meantime, I'm trying to do one of my major projects left over from Romuald every weekend. This weekend it was spinning and loading the Kindle books. I need to get to mending. I have to mend Blanket's Own Blanket a little bit. It took a few hit points of damage. And I found an old rag doll and I want to just reassemble her clothing. So last Romuald, I did a whole lot of mending one day in Romuald, and now I have to get myself back to that. So that's really where we are. My patients are all back. Things are going very smoothly at work, but I have a great job. I'm enjoying my job. It's a very weird thing because now that I think about retirement, I have to look at my job in terms of winding things down gradually over the next 3 years. And that also means packing the house and slowly preparing to move in the next few years. It's a very strange thing to be trimming down. And it's becoming very visible now in the house because I've been trimming things down for easily over a year now. And so suddenly it's starting to show. And I'm really glad. We have a lot less clutter and there's a lot more to go. Meanwhile, you can see my community resources, links to the books that I like to use, that my various library of good books for knitting and crocheting, and links to the skills and techniques that I've used, and links to various online places where you can buy things you might want to add to your knitting and crocheting or dyeing or whatever felting hobby. You can see a link to my Linktree, which is pretty static right now. You can't click on that image of Linktree because you can't. You can see our calendar. We have a free craft exchange coming up on January 11th, where hopefully at 11 a.m. at, I think it's Bridgeport Elementary, in their parking lot. And I'm really looking forward to this because I'm going to empty out a lot of craft leftovers. And all of this can be found on Facebook. These places are accounts on Facebook. That's why I don't have links in the show notes. Meanwhile, I am taking January 20th off because it's just a good idea. I have some very unpleasant patients that day who are just going to be hard to manage. And rather than have therapy sessions sink into politics, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with politics, but you don't really do that in therapy, as I think I've mentioned. You really are talking about the individual's personal problems and strategies and behaviors they can use to improve their life. But I know I have 2 people at least on that day who will not be able to resist the politics. And I just thought, it's a Monday holiday. I think it's time I took one of those off. Meanwhile, you can see the schedule of my upcoming races. I did sneak in some new races, the Jeepers Creepers 5K on October 19th, 2025, and the Santa Clarita Marathon 5K again on November 9th, 2025. The beloved son and I are registered for 5Ks for both of them. He is looking at upping his distance to a 10K or possibly a half marathon. So we'll see, there may be developments on what he runs and how much he runs there. CFR 11 is still scheduled for October 11th, 2025. The planning is real. And Minerva is going to get the last word, as she always does. I bought her a beautiful bed, and she refuses to sleep in it. I put it in her favorite place to sleep. So you can see a picture of her exploring the bed in her favorite sleeping corner in my office. And then you can see a picture of her lying next to the bed with her head cushioned on it, not sleeping in it. Where is she sleeping? Well, she has taken to sleeping on the temperature blanket, the 2021, I believe, temperature blanket, which is on my favorite chair in my knitting nook in the master bedroom. So you can see her there, happily curled up on it. Minerva wants you to know that you should be comfortable, and you don't have to share the same idea of comfort as other people have. You are allowed to do your own thing for comfort. But the important thing is work on your comfort as we go into the dark time of the year. It is time to winter over and take care of yourself. Having said that, please remember that we are a community, and when we work for the good of the community, we are working for the good of the individual. We don't work just for the individual, because then the community will suffer and many of the innocent will be suffering. So having said that, remember your communities. Everybody stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.